Yes.
what you think of nutrition?
Yeah.
What's the cat food?
Food, what you reckon?
Broccoli good for you.
Yeah,
Broccoli
yeah,
good
just
for you, is
just
it?
put in broccoli question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sent 3 a.m.
Yeah. So, so that's the name we went with. So we still don't have a name for this. So it cycles between City Gym live stream,
Doesn't need
the
one.
Jack, Alex, and Stephen show with Jack, Alex, and Stephen. Most episodes.
I think some things are so great that you can't name them. Do you know what I mean? You can't put a name on greatness.
I think you need to know what this is first.
Well, once
You should name it that. You can't put a name on greatness, part 3.
Yeah. That's what we'll go with next time. It'll be good because there's been no part 1 or part 2.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. How's everyone getting on today?
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Love
I
it.
think it's solid. We're getting the outside of my house painted for some reason. So there's just dudes like here painting the house. But yeah, apart from that, it's like nothing going on really.
Nice. That's cool. I
We're
didn't
into
really
summer.
think about we are into summer. I didn't really think about kind of people that would paint houses and stuff would obviously still be working, right? Because they can keep
Yeah.
distance and that's cool.
Yeah. They're still going. It's just like sort of construction yards and DIY stores and stuff are just all closed. Like, so it's just hard to get stuff.
Yeah,
work
that was one I thought was mad. Like when we were looking at that like proposed list of things coming back, when I saw DIY stores at the top of the list, I was like, oh, that's a weird one, but like it makes sense. Like I just didn't think of it.
It does make sense, doesn't it?
DIY and gardening stores. It's just not something I thought of really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll get money back into the economy, and it's stuff that you're doing at home. So,
For sure. Homemade
I have
spotlights.
a girl I work with in Cork through Sigma, and her family own a gardening centre, and they went online when all of this happened, and she said that they literally have not stopped sending out hundreds of orders every single day.
That's mad.
She said they've literally never been this busy in their entire lives, that the entire family, that they live together. So, and I'm assuming the garden centres, wherever they are, they're just sending out hundreds of orders every day. All of Ireland's gone fucking mad in gardening.
Jeez, that's
Love
mad.
it.
smart, right?
Just people who gone mad for flowers, like.
Yeah, we're supposed to do nothing else, right?
Yeah, and everyone's
Sure.
telling them to take up a hobby, like so. you know,
Yeah.
everyone's just like, suppose I can put some fucking flowers in the ground.
Tentacle seeds.
Hand me the trowel. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. You always say, take up a new hobby or, spend time on something else. Then you hear what people do and you're like, that's ridiculous. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
How's everyone's training going?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris?
I'll actually be able to power lift from next week, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Come on,
Oh,
Andrew.
fuck yeah, man.
Do you see his the homemade squat rack he uploaded today? I think was it.
Yeah.
It's got
I
a
saw
240 out of it.
Yeah, I just saw that right before I came on here. Fucking hell, man.
Yeah, man, that thing moved pretty fast.
Yeah.
Oh, the
And-
240. That was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
No, the squat rack. The squat rack moved fucking fast.
It collapsed. He's gone now.
Yeah, he died.
R.I.P. Andrew.
Yeah, you
No,
said
it
you
was
see the squat rack, and he said it moved fast. I was like, squat racks aren't meant to move.
It's a bad homemade squat rack.
Oh, fuck, that's good.
No, the 240 was really solid. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, good. Fuck you guys, been good. Now you have your work cut out to catch up with me again because I've had 4 days of good training, Jack.
I think I'll be good after a week or two. I think I'll be there.
Will you do GoFundMe for lights, Steve?
No,
No, yeah, staying in the dark.
yeah, I could actually train during the day. I could turn on my lamp, but I like training in the dark. It's nice.
It's
You're
because
weird.
when you sent it to me initially, I didn't know if you were joking or not. Like, I thought it was just an all black video.
No,
You're
no,
like,
no.
hey, you
You just
know,
have to turn the brightness up on your phone.
yeah, but even with that, I could just see the plates move and like a
Yeah,
knee
okay.
snap to finish the deadlift. I was like, oh yeah, that can go up.
Yeah, you can see a resemblance of a deadlift for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, surprising the weights. All the weights think I'm sleeping, so they're not as heavy.
And then
Actually
boom.
catch them like.
Yeah, you gotta catch them cold, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually short circuited the whole shed when I was putting together the squat rack because so Jack, I actually put the squat rack together wrong the first time. So it took me like 3 hours to put it together because I put like the sideways supports in wrong, and
Nice.
then I basically dropped one from the top. It just dropped because I assembled an airspace, so one from the top just fell, and I had an extension lead in the shed with a lamp attached to it. And it cut straight through the wire, so sparks went fucking flying everywhere, and the rack was like
Jesus
electrocuted for a
Christ,
second.
man.
Yeah,
No
so
wonder I didn't hear from you for like 2 days. You were probably electrocuted in the shed, like just helping on the floor.
yeah, I'm like fucking what's his name? I'm like Electro from Spider-Man now. If I didn't fall into a thing,
Yeah, you are, yeah.
electrocuted on his squat rack.
You are, yeah.
Yeah, that's me. But yeah, sure. Suppose I'll stop talking shit and we can actually kick off the live stream. But yeah, so today Gar has basically joined us to talk about all things nutrition and lifestyle during lockdown. I'm in a dressing gown, so I can't partake in flexing at the minute.
Bust through the gown, Steve.
Mm.
Yeah, I was debating taking it off, but then I was like, we've been in lockdown for 2 months. People know I'm in a dressing gown.
Yeah, I'll have to put this back on in a minute. I'm not that warm.
Yeah. My legs will get cold. But so yeah, that's
So that's what we're doing.
I lost my train of thought there. So yeah, Gary, do you want to sort of kick it off just with a background of how sort of people have been getting on during lockdown and how you've been finding it?
So I coach a few people through nutrition, and kind of some of the observations that have been really helpful for people so far have been kind of predominantly like two camps, because everyone seems kind of a bit anxious at the moment. Obviously, killer virus and all, roaming around the streets. And the ways that kind of people have been leaning towards is those who need a lot of rigidity in what they're doing, and those that need a lot of flexibility in what they're doing, right? So some people have been like almost freaking out if they don't hit like calories, macros, everything to the exact T. They're like, I need to do this. It's keeping my mind off what's going on. It allows me to control something, it allows me to focus, and that's really helpful, right? So if that's the person, that is really helpful for them, because if I tell them to no, relax, it's quarantine, no need, there's no comps, there's nothing, relax, that's going to be counterintuitive, right? But then there's those who need the flexibility, who've previously been very rigid with their nutrition intake, but right now at the moment they're stressed out about a lot of other things because people have a lot going on, right? It's the first time that they've been quarantined at home. They're trying to work from home, which they've never done. Their companies are trying to set up structures for them to work. They might have a family at home. There's lots and lots going on top of the stress of the virus, and all of that's impact, and it could have impact on people, right? So other people are saying that like right now is not a good time for me to be in any way tracking. So what I've been doing with people like that is, and this might seem obvious on the surface when I say it, but it has not been obvious for a lot of people, which is just eat normal looking meals, as stupid as that sounds, right? But if you've been tracking for quite a long time, like portion wise in your head, you're almost going to know exactly what's going on, right? Like if you pull a plate out and you're cooking, you're going to pretty much know roughly what's going into that. So I've just been saying to people, eat as normal as you can, and try and make some protein and some vegetables a staple at every meal if you can, or fruit. And then other than that, kind of like feeling kind of how you're feeling and kind of listen to some internal cues for hunger. A lot of people are lucky enough to have training kit, so kind of like have carbohydrates at optimal times, like an hour to two before training, within an hour and a half post training, and don't track anything too strict. So it's kind of like they're the two. I'm sure there's more than just those two camps, but that's predominantly what I've seen is both sides here of people who need that strictness and that rigidity and those who need flexibility. I don't know if you guys have noticed yourselves or anyone else kind of fallen into those. But yeah, fire away if you've questions or thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that sort of seems to be the way that most people tend to go anyway. Like people with people who are sort of able to follow like tracking in moderation and use it that way tend to sort of be the outliers, isn't it? You tend to have people who either like can't really track because it stressed them out too much, or people who need to track for the rigidity of it. So right now it's probably just going to be exaggerated because of everything that's going on.
Exactly. That's a good word for it. It's exaggerated at the moment, you know? It's something so controllable, and then at the same time people can, while they're at home and they're not getting takeaways, they're not eating out in cafes, those people that need tracking can track literally the best they've ever done in their life, which like it helps everything for them, which is pretty cool. But you're right saying there's a lot of people that they just can't track. They've tried it. It's not conducive to their lifestyle. It's not helpful, and that's another side of things as well, which if you're one of those people who's watching, or if you watch this on a replay, it's also perfectly fine. You know, like you can just structure it around meals, and kind of some of the outlines of what we were saying a while ago. Like, you know, you could have 3 to 6 meals or snacks in your day. Again, protein is staple at each meal. Some pretty handy guidelines, like we put in the Teen Nutrition ebook recently. You can just use your hands, so like 2 fist size portions of protein on your plate, 2 from vegetables and 2 from carbohydrates. You're pretty much golden throughout the day if you're training. But again, it's about finding what suits the individual, which is which can be the tough part at times, you know, especially during a time when people are finding it so tough.
Yeah, because I thought with like say for myself, I thought with all of the free time that we'd have, it would be really easy to like sort of get back into tracking and just to like sort of eat a lot of really good meals. But I found that even though there wasn't as much going on, I just didn't really want to be cooking as much as I normally would. So for myself, I found it just like doing a meal prep and rather than tracking, just having meals laid out so that I could have a structure in my day, so that even when I wasn't sort of bothered going cooking something, I could just pull something out of the fridge that was still like a decent quality meal. It has helped me a lot with my training, because then at least I have decent meals, so I'm less inclined to like to just go snacking or not eat for a prolonged period of time through just setting it up that way.
That's fantastic, man. And I think a lot of people will actually kind of follow you in that approach. And like the main thing, because I would almost be in there myself, because you guys know, like I pretty much haven't let up work or routine since they started, which is good. And my main thing is I'll forget to eat a meal and I'll end up snacking, and then I'll have a crap training session and wonder like, geez, I wonder why that training session was so bad. But if I look over my day, then it's like, oh, I had a Twix at 11 o'clock, class. That's why it went so poorly, you know? So you're right. If you have like quick go-tos ready, that is super helpful. What about the Jacks? What have you guys been up to?
Will I go first or will you?
Yeah, you go first. I'll go after.
Yeah, I guess in the beginning of all this lockdown, like obviously I moved over to here. So for the first while, I just didn't want to track for a while, to just enjoy my meals, and you know, like just eat, like you know, like just make meals for me and my girlfriend Ash, and just you know, just try and be somewhat accountable for myself, but just not have to like weigh stuff out and just not have to deal with that. And it was fun, but I really did find it hard getting back into it, you know, because like I guess you just don't realize like how often I was snacking and not really realizing how much I was eating. And then when I started tracking, I was just realizing like how much food that I guess I was missing in like the previous few weeks. So I did find it hard. But like, I just found it very easy to normalize my days, and I felt an awful lot more like I used to feel, Joe, before all this COVID-19 crack. Like I did cut my calories, because obviously like I'm not expending as much energy. Like, we aren't in the gym, we aren't pacing around, we aren't
Sure.
we aren't doing our like 2 or 3 or 4 hour sessions. Even though we could do them in probably like an hour and a half, we'd stretch our sessions to 4 hours. Like
Days. Those were the days.
Oh, those are the days. But yeah, I just cut my calories down, and like just try to get back on the horse as best I could, and that's just what I've been doing for the last little while.
Solid, man.
Yeah. In my case, like I haven't really been tracking much, but I have a decent idea of the amounts of food I need to eat to maintain or go up in weight.
Brilliant.
And then outside of that, like I've been kind of keeping a loose eye on like protein, because I know I feel best on eating around 250 grams. So like I tracked that for maybe the first week or two, just to get an idea of what that actually looks like and how many meals I need to eat to basically get there. And then outside of that, it's kind of been, so my goal for quarantine is just to go up in weight. So I've been basically basing my meals around the 250 grams of protein and around training as well. So say the majority of my carbs are situated on either side of my training. And then outside of that, like I just need a lot of food to put on weight. So that's probably been the biggest like chore. But outside of that, like the fact we're not moving as much definitely has helped that. And just getting simpler calories, like as in like I might have like a beer or two a night because I'm not getting up super early, which is great for calories and I really enjoy lately, which I hadn't been doing before. But it's just like, especially with this fucking decent weather and stuff, it's really easy to have like two or three like 2 craft beers and you're like delighted with yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been enjoying the shit out of that. But yeah, body weight's been going up steadily. Like I'm up to like 104 or 105 now in the mornings.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
So push on for another 3 or 4 kilos and cut back, I'd say. But yeah, no, nutrition's been fine. Like I found, like when I was leading into quarantine, I wasn't necessarily tracking, but I was doing something very similar. But this is just lend itself to making that somewhat easier. It's probably a little bit more accurate, and just the reduction in like meat has made my goal of going up in weight a lot easier. So I'm enjoying that.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
How have you found so what you guys were touching on there was going to be my next question for you was how have your clients been finding the reduction in meat in relation to their eating habits? Have you found that it's made it harder for people to sort of say for people who are looking to maintain or lose body weight, which is something I'll sort of circle back to in a minute, but for those people, how are they finding the reduction in need? Is it making their goals more difficult, or is their hunger sort of coming down in accordance with their need?
That's aimed to me, yeah?
Yeah.
So no, that's a really good point, man, because like a lot of people I have would have very active lifestyles, very active jobs. They've been moving quite a bit throughout their day. So they're used to eating so much. So the adjustment period has been quite tough for a few people who want to maintain a certain weight, but initially saw it jump right off the bat. Because all different people are doing different things. They don't necessarily fill me in week to week on, oh, hey, my job actually stopped this particular week. Do you know what I mean? Because some people were actually working very far into this quarantine. And all I can do is look at the check-in and look at the corresponding figures, right? Like what's your average body weight, average calorie intake, etc. But then you just see kind of 1 week, like someone's like 1.5 kilos up on average or something. You're like, oh, okay. We need to look at this. What's going on here? And you find out that they've stopped work or just overall, like they've been hampered, like they haven't been able to go out, or something has happened where it's kind of bolstered them to home a little bit more. We've seen weight come up, so obviously calories have to come down to meet this, and like you're going to see like a little bit of residual hunger for a couple of days, or maybe even like up to a week or 10 days. You're going to start feeling a little bit of hunger as you adjust, but things adjust accordingly and quite quickly. And most people haven't found that tough. They don't like losing calories. I don't think anyone does, right? But most people have transitioned quite well. And I think we're very lucky with the population that we work with are like a performance population, right? So like their goals that they keep in mind is that like, I want to do well throughout quarantine and I want to train with whatever I can so that I can be the strongest or most in-line version of myself when I get back to the gym, when I get back to proper training. So I think most people have this like performance first attitude still, which it helps everything, right? If you were dealing with Gen Pop or like an obese pop or something, it would be very different right now. Like lots of things would be going on, but because we're dealing with athletes, they just switch a gear up and they're quite happy to do whatever as long as it keeps them in line with their goals, which is really cool.
Yeah, sure. And, yeah, that sort of segues nicely into thanks to the mask was, say for like we deal with athletes in powerlifting who compete in a weight class sport. So like your body weight is going to be quite an important factor to consider year round. Obviously, the magnitude of how much you look at it increases as you get closer to a competition. But right now, with no competitions in line at all, like whether we'll have any this year, we don't know, but even which way it goes for most people, there is no set timelines. What's your sort of views on how people should be, say, like treating this period of time in relation to their body weight, say for people who maybe sort of who typically sit above their weight class, or people whose body weight may be trending upwards to a place where they're above it? Do you see now as a time where they could potentially sort of drop closer to their weight class, as like the sort of importance of their training isn't overly high, or is it more a case of like sort of letting people's body weight sit wherever right now, just because of the sort of time that it is?
So there's kind of two good bits to that. Like I'll go to the last one first, which is kind of let it sit wherever. Like I would be down right now just to keep people happy. Whatever keeps you happy and kind of helps you live life right now. If that's what you want, that's what I want to. I want people to be happy. I don't want to add stress to a stressful time. I think that's important to say right off the bat. And I've told everyone that I work with this, that I would rather not make life tougher. I would rather make it easier, right? So if that means letting body weight fall wherever, if it's like a kilo or two up or a kilo or two back, because, different people have tendencies to go different ways, that's perfectly fine, so whichever suits you. But then the opposite side, what a few people have said to me is, I would like to experiment, right? I would like to like push up a little bit in weight or come down a little bit in weight. And since there's going to be no competitions for quite a while, what do you think about like trying an experiment? Anyone that has said that, they genuinely must have the curiosity to say so, right? Like you don't just come up with this kind of like out of nowhere. It's something you've been thinking of. And for me, that's just going to have a little bit more buy-in for someone. Like they're going to be a little bit more excited to try that. They've come forward with this idea, and why not try it? Like it's a time that we can experiment, because even when things do reopen, when gyms reopen, they're going to be under new regulations. So things are going to be a bit slower. And I think for the most part, from what I'm seeing, and I'm trying to keep as close an eye on things as I can, but it seems like competitions won't be for quite a while once everything is open, because obviously like mass gatherings, first of all. But the second thing is we're going to have to give people some time to actually train and kind of get back on track, right? We're not going to say, hey, gyms are open, comp in 8 weeks. It's not realistic, right? So it'll be a couple of months after everyone reopens. So now is a time to experiment if you're so inclined to do so. If you're thinking that could be something fun, it could be something to get extra buy-in, why not try it, Does that answer the question, or did I just kind of ramble on about random things?
No, that answered it, yeah.
Great.
I was just a small question to add to that. If someone's like sole concern was their performance in powerlifting, if they weren't too concerned about physique and like overall happiness, which way would you probably, and if they had limited equipment, which way would you lean towards going as far as that deficit, surplus, maintaining kind of, like, would you have any preference there, or would you just?
I would have, like, it would be context specific, right? As in, like, what equipment do they have when it's limited, and overall, like, where do they sit and body fat wise, stuff like that, right? But in terms of if you didn't want to be happy and you didn't want to experiment, which is,
Yeah.
I love how you phrased it.
Yeah. Fuck that.
I would be more along the lines of maintenance to surplus.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
That makes
that's
sense.
where I would, yeah, it makes sense for sure.
Yeah, I would have understood maintenance to be sure, like just from a like maintaining muscle point surplus as well, I suppose, from just a maintaining muscle point of view.
For sure. Like even a slight surplus right now, like I mean very slight. If you're still training hard a couple of times a week, even if it's only body weight, like it's going to have a positive effect regardless. And as with any like gaining guidelines, you would just keep an eye on body fat, right? Like if you felt like things were coming on too quickly, or if you were watching the scales, if you have scales, I know a lot of people don't, and things were going up too quick, you could just keep an eye on that. But yeah, so maintaining to surplus if happiness and experiments are not your goal. What a fucking way to phrase it.
Yeah, that's fair. Like for most people who tuned in at 12 o'clock to listen to the four of us, you can assume that happiness isn't something that ranks highly on
it's
their
not
list of priority.
Oh God,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
they
that's
hate
it,
themselves. That's why they're here.
Losers.
I'm
punishment.
asking for the people.
Yeah, people who've made it 27 minutes into this don't give a shit about happiness.
No.
So that's context related. That's a very context heavy question. Yeah, and so yes, I suppose on that side, apart from like the calories coming in, would be the other side of it is calories going out. For people right now with like exercise being extremely limited, and you know, let's say like your needs gone down, so your calories have gone down. One of the sort of best ways to mitigate that is to literally move more, if it is at all possible. But obviously with all the restrictions in place and just everyone being at home, like, you know, everyone has different situations, so it can be difficult to sort of get out and about. Are there any strategies on that side in terms of like non-training related activity that you've found to be successful, or any
So
yeah,
I can comment on stuff that people have told me has worked well for them, which is, it's kind of cool because this is the answers that are coming from people who are doing quite well.
Yeah.
So
there's
most
no right
people,
or wrong right now. So,
exactly.
Like what people are finding effective is the best sort of resources that we have.
Yeah. What people are finding effective for themselves, you know. So I think what most people have done is download some form of like step counter, and the only reason being is that most people have said on a normal day today I don't have to think about steps because I move so much, you know, like you're moving around the office, or you know, like you're walking to your car, parking, walking to your job or to college or whatever. So people are walking quite a bit. But what people have told me is that they find that if they don't have this like external cue of like, oh, I can check literally how many steps I took using whatever, that they're just kind of inclined to sit down for the day, which is fine. You know, if that's what some people want to do, you should do it, right? But some people have said that they've downloaded these step tracking apps. I think they come standard on most phones as well, and that they're using this as a little gauge. So most people are going out for, I know myself, I do this. I go out for a walk near midnight. There's absolutely no one out, and I walk the dog for like 3 to 5K every night. It just keeps me moving. It keeps steps up, and overall, the one reason I do it isn't for like actual body composition reasons. I'm happy being a fat bastard. It's more so just based around I feel better the day after, and I know I do. Like the day where I missed that walk, I just don't feel as lively the day after, you know. But other people that have been kind of more constricted than I have, and that others have that have used the same thing, have been doing things like mini circuits, mini bodyweight circuits, like setting a timer 15-20 minutes, going ham for that. Other people have like done things which I've like they've set a certain amount of stairs that they do in their day, which has just been cracking me up. I just picture someone running up and down the stairs all day. But they're like, yeah, so I did like 20 laps of the stairs yesterday, I'll do 22 tomorrow. But like, again, that's something that people have access to. It's what people are enjoying, oddly enough. So, you know, go for it. Other people have adopted like super old school methods. I don't know if you guys remember a football strength coach who was popular a few years ago, Dan John. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like he is I didn't realize how mad these things were. He has like the 500 kettlebell swing a day challenge. So you put a fucking kettlebell in the room you visit the most. So like if it's your kitchen or whatever, and every time you walk in, you do 5 or 10 reps. Now I don't know how this has become popular, but like quite a few people that I'm coaching are swinging a kettlebell every time. And this, I'm not asking them, this is Dan John asking them. They're swinging a kettlebell like 5, 10, 15, or 20 times every time they enter a room. Like, it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much, I'd forget what I went into the room to do. You know, if I went in to get a cup of coffee and I did 20 swings, I'd be gassed. I wouldn't know why I went in there, and I just go back and sit down, you know? So yeah, so like I think it's people are making the most of what they have, and people are getting really creative as to how to keep like their output going. And for the most part, I think when people are left alone, they're kind of doing quite well with this. It's like, well, I want to move, so I'm going to invent something, or I'm going to look up Dan John stuff online. Just for clarification, I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. I'm just, again, commenting what people are doing. Disclaimer, yeah. But yeah, that's a couple of things. If you guys come across anyone with any unusual or effective strategies they've been using,
so one thing I've noticed people doing is like, this isn't from like any fitness podcasts or anything like that. It's just a few podcasts I listen to with like a few normies on it. But they've attached their exercise to things like Netflix and podcasts and various things like that. Yeah, they're just using it as like, okay, I found this podcast I like. Episodes are around 40 minutes to an hour. I only get to listen to this podcast when I'm going for walks or runs, or walking up and down stairs. I think it is a good idea, because like for like our most of our fellas, guys and girls, are powerlifters, so they mightn't be that interested in the more kind of steady state, low intensity cardio stuff. It mightn't be as interesting. So it is a good way to just to bring up calories a little bit, like including that with like Netflix and stuff. Just having it as like, okay, I only get to watch this show or listen to this podcast when I'm doing this activity is a pretty good idea to motivate you or give you like something to look forward to while you're doing it.
That's do you know James Clear? He wrote that book Atomic Habits. He talks a lot about that, man. This idea of, I think he calls it sandwiching. Is it like where you use an activity you like as a cue to do something that you may not like or want to do, and you continue with the likable cue afterwards, which is pretty cool. So like, like a podcast or Netflix show or whatever. That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. The only counterpoint I have to that is for people like me whose brain doesn't function that well, I can't multitask on that sort of level. I can't listen to a podcast and walk at the same time. So I'll walk 40 minutes.
You're such a minority there. You have to be a minority. I'm sorry. I just imagine you turn on the podcast on your phone, your legs stop working, you just fall over.
Or just like the podcast ends and you don't know where you are.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, you're like, you just feel sand between your toes, and you're like, what the fuck? Where am I?
Yeah, no, but what actually happens is I'll turn on the podcast, go for a walk, or turn on the ebook, go for a walk. I'll walk for 40 minutes, hearing absolutely nothing. Then I stop walking. Then I'm like, where the fuck did Dave Goggins come from? What is he talking about? Where did this go? So then I have to rewind 50 minutes and just sit down and listen to it. But that's actually a compromise I've come to. Is I'll walk. There's a rock that I like sitting on the farm. Walk to the rock, sit down, listen to the podcast there, walk home.
I love it.
But yeah, I'm not able to walk and listen to podcasts.
Yeah, well,
I do like the
to be fair, a lot of the podcasts I listen to are totally like, they're proper like brain wallpaper. Like they're like you can kind of just zone in and out, because like I'll do the same thing as far as like especially the comedy ones. Like I'll go for a walk, I'll think about something entirely different. Like I'll literally be thinking about squatting for a while, and I come back, like tune back into the podcast, and they're, I don't know, talking about, they're making jokes about coronavirus or something like that. So they don't all have to be informative podcasts. That's the one
Mm.
thing with those more informative, like information heavy podcasts. You kind of need to, you need to focus in a little bit more. Granted, I can still manage like walking and listening to it, but I can understand
Yeah,
how.
rub it in.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about how much conscious thought you're putting into walking. It was,
Yeah.
it was
I love that.
taken
Left,
up.
right, left,
Right, left, breathe. Right,
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. Taking 4 steps, only using my left foot.
Just go around in a circle.
Oh man. Oh, that's not right. Yeah, I do find if I hit a pretty heavy, when I'm out walking the dog, if I hit like a pretty heavy point in something, because I don't always listen to educational stuff, but if it is really heavy and something you have to remember and focus on, I do find myself stopping to listen. I must look like such a weirdo when I'm out, because I just stop and I just there for me, like, okay, and then I just keep walking, and I stop again. Like if anyone is in the house looking out in the street, they're like, what is wrong with this guy? Why does he keep stopping?
Yeah. Just tell him it's like, oh yeah, I wasn't sure if I locked the door or not. You know.
Yeah.
Just that's all you're thinking. Did I leave the immersion on?
It's a new form of training. Stop, start walking. Don't question me.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's yeah, no, I do like that idea though. And have anyone else found any like sort of like that's one of the like more predominant things you see people doing is just like going for a walk and listening to a podcast, because it is quite time effective and it is just good use of your time really, and a good way of getting activity in. Has there been any other sort of ways that people have found that have been useful for increasing activity levels?
None that pop off the top of my head. What about the jacks? Have you guys come across anything?
Nothing really out of the normal, like, you know, like just
Taking extreme dose of caffeine kind of helps because you just move around a lot. Like
your heart rate
like
does increase, not your activity,
like
but
post training. Oh, mine does. I just kind of move everywhere. Like I move a lot anyway, so that's that isn't too much of an issue. But yeah, I can't really think of much. All I've seen is, as you said, like going for walks and, you know, just like a very localized kind of movement. I haven't seen too many people get equipment to just do little circuits and stuff, you know.
I've been enjoying those who kind of are on the more extreme side of walking. So this is popped to mind that quite a few people have told me that they're stuffing their backpack with like dumbbells and kettlebells and just, you know, off I go. It's like it's a really fucking extreme thing to do for walking, but I'm loving it, you know. Just, I'm gonna go off now. I'm gonna walk everywhere with this 16 kilo kettlebell in my bag. You know, I just find it hilarious that if it ever ripped through the bag, you'd just be walking home with a kettlebell in your hand.
Yeah. Like if there ever was a time to experiment with things that you would normally never do, it is right now. There's no training stress or there actually there's nothing. So right now is the time to experiment with stuff.
For sure.
And then something else that I meant to ask earlier, Gary, actually is say for people right now in lockdown who may not be able to train at full capacity, outside of like it being personal preference and in terms of which way their body weight goes, whether they're, you know, happy to stay at a certain weight or whichever. Is there any other considerations that you'd have? Obviously things have to be individualized down to the person, but is there any sort of broader considerations that people should have in terms of what they're doing with their nutrition, like say with things like their protein count or amount of meals they're hitting per day? Is there any considerations that you have there for people who may not be training at the same level as they were before but still want to improve their performance?
So I suppose like you could go like really research heavy if you wanted to and talk about like the things that I suppose you would talk about normally to any athlete, right? But I don't know if they have the same carryover right now. So that's the only thing that I would say to people is that because we've never been in this kind of period in time before, kind of anyone who does have all the answers, I feel like they're just kind of making it up. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I hate that it depends and it should be context specific in these kind of answers. But the only reason being is that like I'm finding such varying things between person to person, right? Like I could say that like research has shown like 4 to 6 meals adequately spaced out throughout a day is optimal for performance body composition, right? But when we say something like that, someone would say, oh yeah, that's all well and good, but like I'm not training right now, and work has stepped up a notch from home, and I also have to mind the kid while I'm doing whatever. You're like, well, I don't want you to be eating 4 to 6 meals. Do you know what I mean? And I know you might be saying, okay, well, what about the people that don't have that? So yeah, you could still go with the same premise of like, we have like set meal times, certain amount of meals per day, adequately spaced out, certain amounts of protein in each one, and then like vary fat and carbs depending on where you are moving. But I'm just not sure right now is the time that that this matters the most. Do you know what I mean? And that's not me trying to be negative or like get away from that question. It's just that, again, we've never been in this, so it's hard to make recommendations for that. For myself personally, I've went between 2 to 4 meals per day, depending on how busy I am with like emails and if I'm doing calls or stuff like this. And like I found that body composition has improved dramatically in the last number of weeks by just being a little bit more conscious of like very small things. Like, you know, if I'm making meals, am I putting like shit tons of sauces or cheeses or additional fats or stuff like that on top of it for no apparent reason? Do you know what I mean? So if I remove those, I'm removing a ton of calories and I'm seeing better body composition on the opposite side of it. So just small things, like if you're probably paying a little bit more attention to what you've got in your plate, you'll probably see some really good results. And that's all without body weight shifting too much. I've seen some good results. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I made a point there or if I just rambled again.
I know you did.
No, yeah.
But those kind of like, it depends context answers, you kind of come out the opposite side, feel like no one's better off. I just talk that no one's better off now. Fuck me. Like
those it depends answers are like really interesting because it's because you see on Instagram, like depending on who you listen to, how they kind of phrase their information can make it sound a lot more what is it, like truth in it than there is. You know, like
Sure.
some people, like say Greg or very academic people, will really phrase things as saying like it depends, and then you come out the other side of this and like don't think I really learned anything there. Whereas how like there probably is a lot of truth to what they're saying in the it depends kind of areas, you know.
yeah,
Whereas how like there's a lot of lifters who like speak in huge absolutes that you're like, okay, like then a lot of lifters will come away from them saying, oh, that's verbatim the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like that you need to do X to get like to get Y, you know?
I think that that's such a dangerous thing, man. Like absolutes are so dangerous because, and I know that that's an absolute statement. I know the irony there, but I think they're so dangerous because people are like, okay, that this lifter or coach or whoever has told me exactly this, and that's the only way to get to whatever goal, right?
Yeah.
But then the problem is if you don't get there, right? Or if that one particular cue doesn't become helpful, then all of a sudden you're left kind of like distraught. You know, you're like, well, this was the only way I could do it, so now there's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
But then you start referring back to the it depends, and oh, maybe there is flexibility in how we approach things. And what's that very weird phrase? There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah.
Super weird phrase, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was. What?
The extent of that is like, so sometimes the actual lifter who's like speaking in like, you know, absolutes, isn't actually speaking in absolutes. They just don't reiterate over and over again, like, don't take my word for it, you know, like all this kind of stuff, you know, like they're not over the top with it. And then it's kind of taken as verbatim like that. Whereas how oftentimes when those lifters or like people, like the ones I'm really thinking of for the most part are like, you know, the more popular lifters like Sean O'Hagan and Chance Mitchell, they speak in absolutes a lot. But when they're actually pressed on their views on podcasts and like other kind of formats, there's actually a lot more give in their thinking than like they'd lead you to believe at the start, you know? So like that kind of stuff is interesting. So it's kind of like it's not necessarily that they are speaking in absolutes. They're just not qualifying it as far as saying there could be they're not doing the kind of evidence-based qualifying it as far as like, there are a million ways to do this, blah 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 kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're speaking much more from experience than anything else.
That's cool. I've noticed that as well about like some of those guys in particular, that they really like ease up on the reins as soon as like they dive into it. And they're like, oh, well, actually, because like those guys coach people and you hear them talk about their clients, like, we actually changed it completely for all these people here. You're like, oh, okay. So it's not absolute.
Yeah, like there definitely is a difference between like sort of speaking in absolutes and just having conviction in what you're doing, because most people who follow a successful, approach to training, you're going to, like, everyone, whether they think they do or not, has systemized what they do to some extent. You have a trained thought that you follow, so therefore there's your system, and that's what you follow. So you're gonna, if it works, you have to have conviction behind it, or else it probably just doesn't fucking work. But as you go along and as you sort of get more skin in the game, you probably notice that your way of doing things, or the person that you idolize's way of doing things, probably isn't the only way of doing things. So it's like, while my way does work, that doesn't mean there aren't other ways that work. And just because something else works doesn't mean the way that I do something is wrong. Like,
Exactly.
there are just loads of ways to get someplace.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for as well. That you said there, conviction, and basic conviction in what you believed, conviction in what you're doing. Because I think the two kind of get muddled as far as absolutes and conviction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like and they're pretty close together, and like particularly when you're talking to someone, like if you ask your coach, or if you ask someone for an answer and they go, well, I don't fucking know, straight off the bat, that doesn't fill you with much confidence. Whereas if someone can come in and give you an answer, you're probably going to have much more buy-in behind it, which is probably much more important than hearing the full context of something when you need an actionable plan. So that can be useful, which is why when you see someone who does something that's highly effective, and they're very I used to think like when people spoke in absolutes, I'd be like, that's retarded, because that's not the only way of doing something. But then the more you see it, it's like, right, well, most of the time they're only talking to their client or their lifter or their friend or whichever, and they just want to see them progress. So what you need to do is sort of put something behind them that'll make them do the work. You need to put a plan. You need to give them a plan that they'll believe in, so that they can sort of go for it and do something. So that's sort of while context is definitely important, having belief in what you do as well, and not getting too sort of caught up in the fact that there are other ways of doing things is important too.
I think like it's different than talking to like a live YouTube stream versus talking to a client, though, right?
Absolutely.
Like you have to speak in generalities when you're speaking to like live YouTube, or you don't know who will see this down the line. You can't say like there's only one way to do something. But like if a client said, hey, how do I do this? You'd say, okay, do X, Y, Z. Try that for a week. Come back to me, and we'll see how that worked. And you could say that with like clear conviction, very, very confident that they would be better off because of it.
Absolutely.
But again, you have context for clients. You don't have context for people who may come across this in a year's time, right?
Yeah, sure. That is a good point. I don't know how we got here, but and do that's it. I suppose in terms of like sort of like considerations of people's nutrition during lockdown, sort of got through quite a lot earlier on. Is there any other like final points that you'd like to bring to people, or things you'd like to make people aware of during this period of time?
I think, man, right now we're in a really cool place that we probably won't be. When I say cool, I mean I'm looking at the optimistic side now, not the killer virus, right? In the fact that we could we could bring stress to an all-time low, we can sleep that little bit more. Like these are things, opportunities that we never have, right? So have a little bit more me time, so you can get a bit more perspective on life, and chill out, watch that show you want to watch, or read that book you want to read. Get an extra hour and a half or 2 hours in bed every night, depending on how much, because like some people like Coach, they've only like 4 or 5 hours a night because they work so much. And some of those people, they don't have a job online right now, right? Like they're getting the emergency payment or whatever, but their work will only continue when things reopen. So for now, it's just like, let's see if we can bring you back to default. Let's see if we can make you default human again, right? Let's bring all the stress back. Let's just enjoy life for a while, take up some other hobbies, get some good sleep, and that will probably have such a massive impact that people won't realize until they're back in the gym, even if they're not training right now. Those that are training with barbells and stuff, that have had this kind of like lifestyle shift, like they're close to hitting PBs. They get to live an athlete lifestyle that they've never had before. They get to, take their time with training. They get to warm up appropriately. They get to take a little bit longer between sets. Like they're enjoying life. They're enjoying training more than ever. And that's cool. So yeah, like that would be the only other point that I would kind of throw in, which is kind of the fluffier side of nutrition, which is lifestyle, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? Which would be just to kind of try enjoy life a little bit more, as broad as that is. Try sleep a little bit more, try bring stress down, and that will positively impact everything. Like your entire body as a system will be better off for it, and like training and everything afterwards will take a huge positive boost because of that. And I know it's kind of wishy-washy in the terms of like you can't quantify things getting better straight away, but like it will have an impact. And if you believe that and do what you have to do, you're going to see it.
Yeah, like just because something isn't quantifiable doesn't mean it's not useful.
Exactly.
Which people caught up on a lot, is wanting to know exactly what something's doing. But if we know that something's like putting you in the right direction, that's surely good enough. Like if someone's struggling with everything right now, even if it isn't something that's going to have a major impact, or even an impact that you can tell them how, or even something that you can tell them how much of an impact it's going to have. Like if you can, like if people, like for myself, or particularly like using myself as sort of a case study, like I was really struggling about 2 or 3 weeks in, just with a lot of my like at the time it seemed like literally everything, like I was struggling with literally everything, because my routine was entirely gone. So I wasn't eating much at all, like and I wasn't staying hydrated at all, because just because my schedule is so messed up that my meals and like drinking habits were completely gone, which meant that training was really subpar, and it got to a stage where I wasn't really training at all. Which, when you want to look at things, when you prioritize it, like you're going to look at training, but right, training is the first thing I need to get down. But in reality, that was probably the last thing I needed to get down, because it was all the other factors that were inhibiting me from training. It was the fact that I wasn't getting enough sleep, and that I wasn't getting any activity in or eating any meals, that was causing my performance to tank to a stage where I literally couldn't train. So just getting to a stage where I was drinking like sort of adequate water, drinking like a gallon and a half of water, eating sort of like 2 to 4 meals a day, and trying to sleep at reasonably regular hours. Because I know for myself, I probably switch to a more nocturnal sleeping habit when I don't have a structure. Like when work sort of downscaled for me, I sort of went towards sleeping at like sort of 4 to 5 a.m. and waking up at like 2 p.m. But I know that when I do that, I literally, my productivity hits zero. Like I will do nothing. So turning that around was sort of the first step towards getting back to productivity, rather than it being the other way around, which was sort of which was what I wanted to do, which was focus on training first and then let everything else fall into place. It was more, I had to create an environment where I could train productively, which is probably something that will be useful for people who are struggling right now, is trying to create some of those smaller habits, which will sort of compound into a useful or productive training environment, rather than the other way around, even if you can't quantifiably say how much benefit going to sleep 2 or 3 hours earlier, or getting a small bit more fresh air, or eating an extra meal will have. You don't know how much of an impact it'll have, but it will have a positive impact. So it's probably something that is going to be useful for people to consider.
That's excellent, man. That's like you just expanded on every point there, and that's perfect. You know, like even though you can't quantify it, like that's exactly what happens, and like life in general becomes better. And a lot of times when people think they need to double down on training effort, and this goes like quarantine or non-quarantine. Like a lot of times when people think they need to double down on training effort, the training effort's probably adequate. You know, like I don't really know anyone that comes into the gym and goes like, 30%. Like most people come in, they try move everything exactly how they should. But probably like in or out of quarantine, if they had an extra hour or two of sleep, if they had adequate calories, timed meals a little bit better, and had adequate hydration, which is everything other than doubling down on training effort, they'd probably have a better training session overall. That's an excellent point, man.
Yeah, for sure. Like, no, that's a really sort of good point as well. That when a lot of people feel like they're not putting adequate effort into the gym, or that they don't have enough intensity there, oftentimes it isn't that intensity that people are lacking in the gym. Because nobody, like people who are interested in this, and particularly people who are still training during quarantine, because most of the people who probably didn't have an interest in training, they're all gone. They're gone. Like,
It's
none
fair
of
to
them
say.
like they just don't do it.
We won't see them on the opposite side.
Yeah. Like people who are doing this for the fun of it are not doing it anymore because it's not fucking fun. So people who are still left, like they probably have a lot more like intrinsic motivation than they give themselves credit for. Because a lot of people probably maybe just from a low self-ego, or a low view of themselves, probably don't view themselves as overly intrinsically motivated. But if you're still going 6 weeks into training in total isolation, like you have a lot of intrinsic motivation. Even if your training quality isn't very good, you have a lot of intrinsic motivation to still be sort of getting after it. And if you feel like your training efforts aren't as good as they're required, it's probably the environment around it that's making it more difficult. So it might necessarily be the effort inside there, it might be the effort every place else that's taking away from it. I think it was James Clear again that said in his newsletter that people who are seen as having really good self-discipline or as really disciplined people are just people who put themselves in environments that require self-discipline at least. It doesn't necessarily come down to like grit or these huge efforts that people see as invaluable, or probably they're seen as desirable, because everyone wants to be like the toughest motherfucker in the room. Everyone wants to be that person. Everyone wants to be this person who can put in this crazy effort all of the time. But like you'll probably get much further if you don't have to put in that effort much at all, and you're just in an environment where training is quite easy, which will be useful for people who are maybe struggling with that a small bit, like creating an environment where you can train at a time that suits you, or where you can have your like meals before training, or you're going into sessions feeling productive rather than really having to pull yourself through them, or create this motivation during the session will be useful.
That's excellent, man.
It's just being able to, like, if you go into a session fully fueled up and feeling good, and you blow the doors off the session, you're much more motivated for the next one. Whereas if you fucking have to like drag your ass through a session, you're not going to be like looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, no, if you get the fuck beat out of yourself in recovery session 1 of the week, like you're not going to be feeling good for big session number 2 at the end of the week. So that momentum and that sort of compounding interest, or whichever way you want to phrase it, on sessions is real. Like, if you're able to if you're able to create any sort of good speed going forward, that's great. But on the other side, you are what?
Some good vibes.
It is good vibes only. But if you're creating sort of fucking bear traps for yourself in sessions with bad habits or complacency, it will sort of sell yourself short as well.
That's it. It's hard to look objectively at it then. It's hard to say, okay, well, I didn't sleep enough last night, and whatever. It's just like, man, I'm fucking shit at training. Useless,
Yeah.
End up freaking out, and then the next session gets worse. And as you're saying, Jack, it kind of gets into this negative cycle. It just goes back and back around, because then you don't really pick yourself up. You just get worse and moodier, and
it
just keeps going,
Yeah, sure. And like for people who are stuck in those sort of cycles, probably like when the bigger prophecies, when people make those self-fulfilling prophecies of like, you know, people who are on bad momentum, they want to turn it all around in the next session. You know, you've had a terrible session, everything's gone really shit. You know, this could have been going on for a couple of sessions right now, but you're like, no, it's fine. I've got things covered. You know, I have all this time. The next session is going to be the best session I've ever had. Like, I'm going to add 40 kilos to my total on Thursday. And it doesn't work out like that. You know, if sessions are going continually shit, having a less than adequate session, next session is actually an improvement. Even if the session isn't good yet, if it's less shit than the last time, you're going back up. And it doesn't sort of happen in like for most people anyway, and I've seen there isn't like a watershed moment where everything starts going right again. You know, you just have to start dusting yourself off, and like it'll start going the other way again, slowly. You know, just as like that sort of bad momentum takes a while to set in. Going the other way around again, it doesn't just because you like slept for a few extra hours or had like some extra meals or drank a bit more water, it doesn't mean your next session is going to be brilliant. But all you have to do is keep adding up those sessions until you come out the other side, or like keep adding up those habits until you come out the other side. And someday you'll start feeling good again. You probably won't notice where, but your training will go well at some stage in the future again. Then it's just a case of trying to maintain it as well as possible from there, because it's not a switch, like it's more of it's not an on-off switch, it's more of like a fucking dimmer switch. Happens slower. But yeah, that is more or less everything I had to say, unless anyone else has anything words of wisdom they want to give to I'm going to go with 2 listeners. Yeah.
Can you check from there?
There's been no comments, so
we're not even live.
That's because it's the middle of the night, because we had to fucking suit someone.
I'm sorry, noon is fucking early for you fuckers. Like, it's 12 o'clock, like.
Everyone's in work or college, man. Come on, other people have lives.
Fuck you.
Man. So yeah, like do you have any final points or takeaway points or things that we didn't get to, Gary, that you'd like people to hear?
No, I think the only other thing I was going to throw on is the lifestyle stuff, and but we covered that there at the end. So other than that, just as I said, I know it's super trivial, but just enjoy yourself. It's a scary time. Stress is high. Enjoy yourself, and you'll come out the opposite end a lot better, you know?
Yeah, like for sure. I think I've probably said it every episode so far, but I really couldn't hammer home enough for people who are struggling a bit, or struggling a lot, or feel like they're completely fucked right now, whichever shade of it they are. If you just don't quit right now, you set yourself up with the potential for progress again in the future.
For sure.
Which is sort of, if you feel like everything's going terribly and there's no hope and you're never going to be able to do anything ever again, if you just don't quit, like things will get better at some stage. And while improving a lot of the habits that or thinking about a lot of the lifestyle factors that we went through today, for people who are struggling, it's probably the first step back towards productive training. It's not necessarily the sessions that you're going through. It's not necessarily creating the warrior mentality that you need to have great sessions. It's probably just going to be getting a small bit more sleep or eating some food that will get you back there if you've really hit zero. But even if you don't do any of that, if you just try and just not completely give in, you will be fine again at some stage. So yeah, just enjoying yourself is an important thing to do.
Sure, man.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for coming on today, Gar.
Thanks,
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Jack Thornton, as well.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, sweet. So that is.
Anyone thank Jack Kenny? Jack,
no,
thanks
fuck
for
him.
coming on.
Fuck him.
Just gonna leave him out.
I made you up early, so sorry.
Fuck,
sorry. I can't hear him from all the way over in Melbourne.
God.
Yeah, sure. You guys are upside down.
Crikey.
Yeah, how did you turn your screen around today? You're facing the same way as us. You're on the bottom of the planet.
His
Oh,
laptop's upside down.
I just turn my laptop upside down. It's easy.
Oh yeah, I was wondering, is your closet in the
Yeah,
background
right.
up as well?
Everything is upside down, you see. Yeah, that's right. It's actually just too complicated to explain.
Yeah, it's
Man,
physics.
we
don't
should get a
understand.
screenshot of this and just cut Jack and spin him upside down.
Jack
sure,
can actually
you did that
rotate
one
his
time, did
screen,
you?
but yeah, you can rotate your screen, but you just never do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go
yeah.
into video. Go into video settings. Then you can just rotate your screen. You can do so much with this.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Should we do this off the live call?
Nah.
No.
No, I just.
It's ridiculous.
don't be stupid.
Boom.
But
Okay, hold on
yeah.
to that for a second. That's incredible. No, Steve,
Yeah,
you have
man.
to be the right way up here in Ireland, man.
Yeah.
Hop on now, dude.
No, well, he's clearly in space. Can you not tell?
Yeah, I'm in space right now. Yeah.
There's no gravity out here.
Yeah.
Just start like wheeling around like that. Because
Actually, I
you're
don't know how to
in space. Just start like
there we go.
going around.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got blown out of my spaceship, so I'm rotating.
Whoa.
But,
That's excellent.
yeah, there's so much you can do with this app. This is a really underrated app. Well, actually, that's basically the only extra thing you can do. It's probably not a whole pile, but it is fun. But yeah, I suppose we'll leave the episode there because yeah, all of my attention span from training has entirely evaporated in the last 30 seconds. So I thank you for tuning in, and we will have another episode soon at some time, a regular time again in the future.
Fuck yeah.